Bonnie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm Jennifer Purcell, the social media manager for Spark Flash Fiction, and we are here tonight with not just one, but two authors from our latest issue, and I'm very excited about this. I'm going to introduce them real quick, and then we're going to start talking. So I'm going to start first with Bonnie, since Bonnie is to my right, I think, or maybe it's left for y'all. I don't know. I'm directionally challenged. But anyways, Bonnie Martin writes romance where faith and family are integral to the stories. She is a 2022 Maggie Awards of Excellent finalist and a 2023 Florida West Coast Writers winner. Say that 5 times fast. She lives in Maryland with her husband, college-attending son, and 2 German shepherds. Bonnie is currently studying to become certified as an American Sign Language interpreter. And then down below, we have Shannon Sue Dunlap. Shannon lives in hot and humid Texas, where she drew inspiration for her upcoming rom-com, which just released on Tuesday, Lone Star Sweetheart. She loves God, traveling, chocolate, and singing obscure songs from Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals. So Bonnie and Shannon, I'm very excited to have you both here today. So I'm just going to jump right into the question that I love the most when I talk to authors. I want to know what inspired your story. So Bonnie, I'm going to go to you first. What inspired Heart Hacked?
Probably my sons. They are both in cybersecurity and they are both very mischievous. In the story, the phone gets taken and messages are sent. And that's something that will actually happen around here. If you leave your phone unlocked, the rest of the family will get obscure messages sent from mom's phone. And just having fun with the tech and the mischief that can happen. So that was it.
I love that. All right. What about you, Shannon? What was the inspiration behind the attraction hypothesis?
I actually really struggled with the STEM theme because that just is not my side of the brain. I was so happy to be done with high school and algebra and geometry and chemistry and science, all those things. And I don't know that I have used them since then. Therefore, it took me a while to recruit an idea. I can't even remember what on here. Hey, come back.
Oh no.
Should I keep talking?
Keep talking.
The main character story. I just what about a color scientist? Then I had to. Should I keep talking? I don't know. Everything's freezing and disappearing. Is it just?
It's ironic. We did a technology
computer. Is it y'all's too?
It's happening to me too. I don't know what's going on.
On your screen as well, Jennifer?
You're jumping around a little bit. Freezing.
Well, we could use one of those IT specialist sons of yours, Bonnie.
Yeah, my son would get in there and do all this stuff, and it's just he goes click, 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 and that's fixed. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad you're here.
It's just the way that it goes. It's a romantic comedy in action. All of these little hiccups. That's just what I'm going to tell myself. It's a comedy in action.
Inspiration for a future story.
Yes, I love that idea.
The tech guy comes to the rescue.
Anyway, I was writing about a color scientist, and I could use one right now, definitely.
I mean, it seems to be better now.
But
Shannon.
for my heroine, I didn't even know if there actually was such a thing as a color scientist. I'm sorry, I don't. It seems like our conversations aren't syncing.
It is totally okay. All right, hold on a second. All right. Shannon, can you hear us still? Okay. Hang tight, everybody. I'm going to try something real quick.
But I'm sorry.
You're good. Okay. Did that somehow magically make a difference? I don't know.
Well, I could hear everything that you said that time. That was a difference.
All right. Woo! We're going to count that as a win. Okay. All right. So, Shannon, just go ahead and try again. Talk about the last thing I heard was that you said you weren't even sure if there was a color scientist. So I'm curious how you found out that there is a color scientist, or if you just decided just to go
Yes,
with it.
I wasn't sure. But I looked it up and there was. So yay, I found something to write about. And I just took it from there. You know, there was a very important aspect of the story that went along with it, but I don't want to reveal it because it would give away the surprise. So
that I have to say that surprise was one of the greatest ones that I've ever read. When I got to the end of that story, I was like, wow, it was really good. All right, now, Bonnie, we're gonna jump back to you real quick for this next question. What is your favorite romance trope?
I would probably say enemies to lovers. I think that's just the angst and the I hate him, but he's so cute kind of thing that goes on. So it's that's always been my favorite. So I guess it started with Pride and Prejudice. So
I have to agree. I think everyone loved it. For All right, Shannon, what is yours?
yes, I love Pride and Prejudice. I took a bus to English countryside. Is Marriage of Convenience. I've never actually written a Marriage of Convenience story, I don't think, but that's my favorite.
That is my favorite too. I am a sucker for a good Marriage of Convenience story. In fact, Erica Vetch, one of my favorite historical authors, did a series that was just Marriage of Convenience stories, and I was like, yes. I like devoured every single one of those books. But anyways, that brings me to another fantastic question that I love asking writers. What clean romances have you enjoyed lately? So, Shannon, I'm going to let you answer that one first this go around. Tell us a clean romance that you have enjoyed recently.
Jennifer just disappeared on my screen.
Oh, dear.
Both of y'all just disappeared for a little bit. Was that the only one? It was only me that happened to?
Didn't happen on my end.
No, I was fine.
You know, I wonder if it's an internet connection with me. Bonnie, when you're talking about your book, why don't I duck out and sign back in under another internet connection and see if that helps?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we can try that.
Yeah, we can do that.
I'll be back.
All right, Bonnie, hit me with it.
Okay, you were asking about good, clean romances that I've been enjoying recently. Mm-hmm. I found an author. I have a friend who's published author, and she reads voraciously. And I follow her reviews on Goodreads. And she recommended an author named Nicole Van, who I had never heard of before this. And she wrote a series, The Brotherhood of the Black Tartan, and I loved it. And one thing that usually bothers me about series is, you know, the author will review the entire past books in the following books. And this author does not do it. There's one story that's a thread throughout the entire series, but it's always told from the POV character. So it's always just a little bit different. The thing that is in common with all of them. So I really enjoyed that. And I love series. Christine Hunter's Hawthorne House series.
Yes.
And then Casey Stockton, the was it Bradwell brothers. And I think the last one just came out, and it was about the guy I liked the most of the whole set. And I was like, well, what, he kept on getting disappointed. So that was a good one. But I really love the Nicole Van stories.
Yeah.
And these are all historical fiction. So
I have never heard of her. Now I'm going to have to.
Yeah, the Brotherhood of the Black Tartan. It's there's like an enemies to lovers in there, and just all kinds of different tropes throughout the series. So very enjoyable. What about you? While we're waiting for her to get back, what have you been enjoying? I'll turn it around on you. So.
That is a super hard question. So I recently read The Do-Over by Bethany Turner for our readers group. That was a really good book.
Yeah.
I feel like you can't really go wrong with her.
Okay,
hold on. I think we got Shannon back. All right. Are you good now, Shannon?
Can you hear us?
Is it syncing up now?
I can. I got a stronger bandwidth signal on a different channel, so hopefully that will help.
Okay, yay! Okay, so I'm going to finish answering Bonnie's question real quick, and then we'll turn it on to you, Shannon, because we're still talking about clean romances. And then there was this, I've never read Liz Johnson before, but I recently read one of her books, and I'm now blanking on the title. I think it was called something like The Long Way Home, but it was in the second in a series, and I just picked it up because someone asked me to read it, and it was really good. And what was great is, even though it was the second in a series, like I could follow it. I didn't feel lost, and it was just like a really sweet romance between the hero and the heroine. And it was really good. So now I got to go like binge her backlist when I get done catching up with all these other books that I need to be reading, because I am like woefully behind on my TBR. But you know how it goes. So Shannon, talk to us about some clean romances that you have been enjoying.
Well, please allow me to interrupt really quick, because I just went to a writer's retreat where I got with Liz Johnson, and she was just doing her books. And I think her most recent one is The Last Road Home, isn't it? Like Neverland, large story. And what else have I read? I really like books that make me laugh. And Angela Ruth Strong's Husband Auditions. Have either of you read that one?
Yes.
No, I have not.
That one is very
not yet.
funny.
It is super funny. Bonnie, I highly recommend it for like a dark and rainy day. A good laugh, because you were going to laugh through pretty much the whole thing.
Sounds good.
Are there any
I need that laugh, so.
Are there any other ones, Shannon, that you can think of?
I feel really bad that y'all have to keep stopping because of me. So I think I need to duck out, y'all, and just stay out so that you can have a decent interview. For some reason, it just keeps freezing and I can't hear everything that you're saying anyway. So it's okay. I'll just cheer you on and I can see what I do when I watch the interview.
All righty. I am so sorry, Shannon, but we will make this up to you at some point. I promise.
It's nice meeting you.
That's okay. Don't worry about me. Good to meet you, Bonnie. And I liked the GPS thing in your story. If a guy did that for me, that would really won me over. Everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, Shannon. For those of you watching, we will be doing an interview with Shannon coming up soon in the readers group about Lone Star Sweetheart. So we can catch up with her and ask her some of these questions then too, because why not? All right, so Bonnie, let's get
Yes.
back to you now that it's just you in the spotlight. All right. What is the best writing advice that you have ever received?
That's a hard question to answer. I think I'm thinking of three things. Well, I'll say two because two of them were given by the same person. When I first started out writing, I had a friend who was an editor and a published author, and I just asked her to look at my stuff. And her advice to me, just in general, as I was starting my writing adventure, she said, get on Twitter and enter all the contests you can. And that had both those pieces of advice have been priceless to me. I have failed at a lot of contests, but just keeping on trying, I get a lot of good advice. And I would say one of my best pieces of advice came from one of the judges of one of the contests I entered. I did not place or anything like that, but in her comments, she said one trick or one piece of advice she would give to an author who's writing, what I like to do is the dual POV, the man and the woman. She said, and each chapter with the POV character thinking about the other character. And I think that's a good thing, because I'm always like, how do I end a chapter? And you just end the chapter with, something happening that involves thinking about the other character, or planning on seeing the other character, or doing something for the other character. Or if it's enemies to lovers, it's, I've got to, see them again and I don't want to, or something like that. So that was a very good piece of advice so I think that's one of the values of entering contests, is getting the advice and getting the feedback. So I have a love-hate relationship with contests.
Me too. How long have you been writing?
Very long time. My first effort was a book that would have been great if it had been finished like 10 years earlier. Just the world changed and the book was no longer something that the world, that would be acceptable or accepted. And so I moved on and started writing romance. That was a woman's fiction, and just started writing romance. And I just fell in love with happily ever afters. So that's it. Yeah.
So how long have you been writing strictly romance after you decided to make that switch from women's fiction?
I'd probably say maybe 8 years. I've actually written quite a few stories, but only recently have I started. Well, let me go back. I started writing just you would call it closed door romances. Mm-hmm. They were not what I would say clean. When you say clean, I'm saying like there's no mention of sex or anything like that, and the characters were not necessarily Christians. And that's just what I was doing. And then I got to a point where, I can't even really pray. I really don't feel like I can pray for, this to be successful, because I don't think what I'm writing is really going to bring glory to God. I mean, yeah, the kids, the characters may have like Christian family members who are speaking into their lives, but I don't think it fit. And then I started just writing. I changed what I was doing and I started writing inspirational. And I think I've been doing a lot better since then. So,
well, I am very curious to have been doing this for a while. What your writing process looks like? Are you one of those outliners that sits down and you figure out everything about your story and then you dive into it? Are you more of this just sit down and write whatever comes to mind? Are you somewhere in the middle? What does your process look like?
I would say I sometimes call myself the mad plotter. Because what has worked for me is I will write the first chapter and I'll write the last chapter, and I know where I'm heading. I know how this is going to end. I know how they're going to end up. I know, all that, and I know how they start, but then I have to get them from point A to point B. And so I'll write the first chapter, and then I'll write like a highlight point, a couple highlight points, and then kind of like fill in the gaps. So yeah, that's that's my process. It's been pretty consistent. I've tried to do it differently, but that just works for me. And I actually had an agent. I'm gonna mess up. The book start in the middle. Was it?
Well, is that the James Scott Bell book?
Yes. Start the story in the middle, because that's the part you're most excited about. The high, the high point, and that's kind of what I do. I kind of like I hit all the fun stuff, all the exciting points, and then I fill in how they get from each high point. So,
I like that. So when you feel stuck writing, do you just go to the next point that you're excited about?
Yeah. And then, it keeps it fresh. And then I'm kind of like, oh, and then I have to go back and change something but that's been it. So I always have the first chapter written and then the last chapter, and then we're filling in the middle.
I kind of like that though, knowing where you're going without having I can't do a strict outline. And our web manager, Hope Wellborn, has tried to convert me to a plotter. And I'm in the middle now. I will say that. She's gotten me in the middle, but I can't hop over that mountain and go completely on the other side. I just cannot do it. I like your process though. To me, it makes sense. There's some order to it. And I like that it works for you and that you're content with that, because I have not been very content with my process, and I keep trying a million different things, and I feel like it's making things harder for me. And so
I think sometimes it's a temptation to take on look at how somebody else is doing, and well, they're so successful, so that's what I'm going to try. And then you look at somebody else who's successful, and I think you need to find what works for you. And my process is very odd. People look at me and are like, how do you do that? It's like, but a good friend of mine. Well, a good friend of mine. A friend? Is she a good friend? She's a friend. Tony Shiloh. Tony Shiloh. She's mega author. Writes lots of books. And I was explaining this to her once. She's in my chapter of ACFW, and she kind of looked at me and she said, "And that's fun for you?" Because she's a total pantser. So we are just almost exact opposites. It's kind of like, okay, I've got the first, and she's just like looking at me like, how is that fun? But to me it is because it's kind of you're it's kind of like going on a jury. You know where you're going to end up, but how are you going to get there? What turns are going to happen to get you there, and so
yeah.
So we have fun.
You know what I find funny about that? I have a tendency. I have like at least 2 or 3 scenes, and they might be in the middle, they might be at the beginning, they might be at the end. They're somewhere that I'm really excited about, and I usually just go ahead and write those, kind of like you, because I'm excited about those scenes, and I'll write them, and I'm like, I'll figure out everything else later. And one day I was talking to a writing friend, and I hadn't mentioned my process to her at all, but she was like, "Did you know Christy Ann Hunter writes her scenes out of order?" And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, do normal people not do that? And I find that hilarious, because you pick up a Christy Ann Hunter book and it's very cohesive. You read it you have no idea that she might have written a scene in chapter 20 way before she wrote this beautiful scene in chapter 2 that set up. You have no idea.
In the Hawthorne house, I'm probably gonna mess this up. I think there's one where like both stories are happening at the same time, and she said I was talking to her, or was reading something about that process that she went through, where she had to like change things because both stories, one of the stories picked up in the middle of the other story, and it was interesting hearing her say how that kind of got merged together, and kind of gave me the idea of doing the same thing with a series I'd like to do. So.
Yeah, I loved that. And I know which one you're talking about, because it's Georgina's story. Yes. Kind of in the middle of Miranda's. And like you see some of those scenes from Georgina's eyes. Right. And you're like, oh, she's not as big of a brat as I thought she was.
Right. And I love that, because I've got learning disabilities, and just knowing the struggles and seeing that of trying to fake it. I mean, I could never fake it because I just couldn't. But just I love that story. I love Georgiana's story.
Me too. I loved her story too. I think I just called her Georgina. Thank you for correcting me. Her name is Georgiana. I'm still in Pride and Prejudice over here. Like thinking about Georgina Darcy.
Yes.
Playing the piano. But that's to me one of the wonders of editing, because you can always go back and fix something in editing. So I'm going to ask you this question, because I had one writer tell me editing was her favorite part, and like editing and revisions to me just like make me want to pull my hair out. So I'm curious, which do you like better? Do you like the drafting process, or do you like the revisions and the editing?
I love editing and revising and fixing stuff and finding little plot holes. And to me, that's the hard part, is getting the story down. And I'll get down like a rough outline. And I have some notes here. Who was it? I'm sorry. Grabbing something here. Hallie Bridgman, she has a process where she does the stories in layers. Like she'll do the action and the dialogue in one pass through, and then in the next one she'll add the thoughts and that part of it. And she kind of like likens it to a painting, where you start with a sketch, and then you add a little shape, and then you add some color, and then the third pass she'll like add the feelings and the emotion and the color and the smells. And so I really like that idea of it's a constant process of going through one pass, and you're covering one area, and then you're going through on another pass.
Yeah, I kind of like that too.
So it's just kind of like, I'm not going to get it right on the first time. I always thought of it as kind of like a skeleton. I like her idea of starting with a sketch. But skeleton, you start with the bones, and then you add the organs, and then you add the skin, and then you add the clothes and the makeup and all the other pretty stuff. But you're doing it in layers. So the first pass is just a draft, and then I start the editing and adding, and so yeah.
I love that analogy, that it's almost like building a skeleton, and then you add this and then you add that to make the whole story. I love that. That is very inspiring. I feel very inspired now. Like I feel like I need to go sit down and start writing. So that was very good on a Friday evening when I'm like, I'm ready to go to bed early tonight. It's been a week. So I'm gonna like throw a very random question at you, just because I like putting people on the hot seat every once in a while.
No.
It's okay. This isn't a hard question, I don't think, because you kind of told me the answer to this before we went live. But I'm very curious, because I think we all have a trope, at least one trope, that we're just not a huge fan of, that a lot of other people like. So I want to know about a trope that you're just not a huge fan of, and why.
I'll just go with what we were talking about earlier. I do not like the upstairs, downstairs, the poor guy, rich girl, rich guy, the rich guy and a prostitute. Or I just don't like the social, the inequity, the power inequity that sometimes can exist in those types of romance stories. And to me, it's just hard for me to believe it, that a relationship like that can be successful in real life. I like to believe. I don't know why I have that idea, but it just, to me, never seems like it would work. I don't know. that's my feeling on it. So,
I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense, because we're human and we all have like our biases, and so like when it comes to those two different socioeconomic statuses, like it can be kind of hard to imagine, how do you take these two people and put them together in a very successful long-term relationship.
So a lot of times for me, it seems like the personalities may click. You may have a lot in common, as far as interests and such. But if there's like an educational disparity, or I just think that's just a hard one for me to swallow sometimes.
That may be why so many readers love it. It's just like an escape. Like, let me just imagine
Yeah, let me
Right in the
imagine
world.
the millionaire rescuing me out of my waitress job. So
Yes,
the
exactly.
undercover millionaire just wants to whisk me away in his jet.
Yeah, and I'll never have to work again.
Right. So
Maybe he'll give me like a huge library and I can just sit at home all day.
yeah. Lure me in with a library and
But you know, it's funny to me that you mentioned that you just don't find that realistic, because that's one of the things I have against the insta love trope. And I know a lot of people love insta love, and that's great and fine, but I struggle with that because I'm like, you don't know this person, and yet you're automatically like, I love them. And I have a hard time with that. And there's only been a couple of books where an author has made me believe their relationship was going somewhere by the time that I closed the book.
Right. Yeah, that's another one that I just I get
just I can't.
It's not that easy, you know?
Yeah. So, but speaking of romance, I like talking romance. So I'm going to ask a lot of romance related questions now. I'm curious what your favorite moment in a romance is. Because, you know, you have like the meet cute, or like the first kiss, or the first date, or the happily ever after. So what for you is your favorite moment in a romance?
I think, like we were talking, I love the enemies to lovers. And I like the moment when they realize, wait a minute, I do like this person. I just like the light bulb moment that, okay, my world just changed. My whole, it's kind of like a whole change of perspective. And, it's like the world changes. And I like that moment in like a enemies to lovers thing. And you were talking about the marriage of convenience. That's another one I love. I'm actually going to have one planned in my head of a marriage of convenience where she's pregnant and he's a single dad because it was like during the Spanish flu and everybody's dying, and so she's her husband just died and she's pregnant and he's got a son, and they're like, okay, let's just join the households. Your child will have a father. And so that's kind of what I'm having going on in the back of my mind, who's the parents of a character in the current story that I'm querying right now. So
I love that. You know, it kind of reminds me of the story that I think birthed my love of Marriage of Convenience, and that is Love Comes Softly by Jeanette Oak, except in that one, he didn't know she was pregnant at first. That was a little bit of a surprise later. But I love that, and I haven't read a lot of stuff set during the time of the Spanish flu. So what made you decide that was the time period that you wanted to set the story in?
Well, it's kind of like you have to go backwards. Again, this is my everything goes backwards. I was writing a contemporary romance, part of a series about a matchmaking diner owner, and so the main character just says an offhand comment about how her grandparents' marriage ended a feud. This was two families were feuding, and because she was talking about, well, yeah, I'm related to them, but it's through my grandparents, and there's this feud, and it's a long story, and she just kind of brushes over it. And then I'm kind of like thinking, wait a minute, that story needs to be told. That love that ended a feud. So I wrote that story, and then I'm like, wait a minute, this, and the guy of this story, and then I'm like, wait a minute, his parents, it's kind of like, then it goes back, then that's his parents. His parents were the ones who, his mother was pregnant with his sister. He was already born to the father. He was the child of the single dad. And then the kids don't find out that this was a marriage of convenience until like the father's getting ready to die. And so that's how, so it kind of started with the contemporary, and she makes this offhand comment about, yeah, I'm related to them by way of my grandparents, and then it keeps on going back and back, and I'm like, wait a minute, that story needs to be told, and wait a minute, that story needs to be told, and so I have a couple series like branching off from all of it.
I love that. So which do you like writing more, contemporary or historical?
I think I'm beginning to really like historical. Just because I like things I like that you can't just text your true love, and having cell phones, your car breaks down, you're on this deserted road, but then you have to have all these things go wrong. Like my phone doesn't work, and cell towers are down, or so. It's kind of like it takes away a lot of the tension that, okay, my true love, I'm not going to see him, and I have to write this letter, and it's gonna, so. And the feuding story is the one that actually won the finals in the Maggie, and won the Florida writers, West Coast writers, and they're in this small town, and their families are feuding, so they have to, like, they're living in the same town, but they write letters to each other because that's the only way they can communicate. And because the postmaster had died during the Spanish flu, his aunt is the postmistress of the town. And she knows everybody's handwriting, so she sees these letters going back and forth, and she figures that's what's going on. So she gets involved, and so it's fun.
I love that.
The thing of having to write letters instead of, you could secretly text your true love. It's just not the same.
Yeah, I have to agree. I like writing contemporary romance, but one thing that I love about historical romance is a lot of times you kind of have a little built-in tension there because they couldn't do PDA
right
then, and it was considered socially unacceptable for certain things.
Okay, you've got to get married. You were caught alone. You're alone for 5 minutes. Okay, you've got to get married now. Your reputations are at stake. And there's a little bit of that in this, kind of, because it's like this one is like in the 40s, 1940, and there's a little bit of that still going on where you have to be careful of your reputation, and it's a small town, everybody's watching everybody, and everybody knows about the feud, so you two aren't even supposed to be talking to each other, and so it's fun.
Yeah, I like that. What I find interesting about history, and my parents have spoken to me about this a couple times because their grandparents had a phone, and I think they had a phone too on the party line where you could listen in onto someone else's conversation. And I was like,
operator during that time.
If I ever get out of the 1800s, I'm going to have to write something about a story with someone listening in on the party line. Like, to me, that just sounds like some great conflict right there. She
said that, for the first couple weeks, it was really interesting. But then after that, you've heard everything. So you just kind of, you're no longer interested. The new girls, they're all giddy about it, and they're all listening in. But after a while, it just, more of the same.
Yeah. I love that, though. So before we hop off, I'm going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
I'm going to gear it towards historical because I just find this interesting whenever I talk to authors who write historical. If you could go live in any era in history in time, what era would you choose and why?
Wow. That is a hard question because I guess I kind of like, I like living right now because the health, we have antibiotics and, surgical procedures and, but I think, and it depends on your social class too. But I do like, I don't know, maybe just pioneer days, just, things kind of like, maybe after the railroads, you can get things from other parts of the country. There's some travel, but things are still simple, and there's no televisions or radios or things to distract you. And the one of the things I put in the book is that everybody reads. The bookstore is a big deal because everybody reads, and these two love interests are trying to exchange books, and the postmistress is trying to have to carry the books back and forth. And so, the whole thing of, that was an entertainment. That's what you did. They had a radio and they listened to the radio, but you turn the radio off at a certain point, and then, well, what do? You read.
So just I like that was I think that was a little big thing in Pride and Prejudice too, that everybody had books because that's what you did. You didn't have or danced. You had a lot of dances. I would have been a wallflower if I lived in Regency.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Uber introvert here, so yes, I'm not a people person. In fact, to me, it's so funny going to a writers conference because you're surrounded by all these writers.
Oh no.
And you still have like half introverts and half extroverts.
Right.
And I would go to my room at night, and sometimes I would just sit there in complete silence. And then last year, though, I had a roommate, and so sometimes we would talk, but then we would look at the clock and we'd be like, "Let's just go to bed." And then like, let's just go to bed.
It's funny. I have a friend I was going to, we had a couple months ago, we had been texting back and forth about, hey, you want to drive right down to the conference again this year? Cause that's how I met her last year. And, I was like, yeah, that's great. We'll do that. And she said, oh, you want to share a room? And this woman is like an extrovert of extroverts. And I'm kind of like, no. And I'm kind of like, being the introvert, because there's a big joke because there was 2 extroverts and 1 introvert on the ride down last year. And I was in the back and these 2 were chattering back and forth. And then every once in a while they'd remember I was in the back seat and they'd throw a question back and I'd answer them with a question that they could answer and keep talking. So it was kind of funny that I said, well, no, because I'm an introvert and I'm going to go back to my room and be by myself. And she's like, she's the exact opposite. She wants a roommate so she can talk and download and talk about her day and what she learned and and I'm kind of like, I just want to sit and think about it and I'll be fine. Thank you.
And I find myself writing more introverts because I understand that.
Right.
Personality, and I need to stop. Like I got to at some point write an extrovert and I need to write them well. So, but you tend to write what you know. And so right. I stick safe to the introverts.
Yes. Well, I have one very extroverted daughter, so that's helpful to know the perspective of an extrovert. And she was my firstborn, and so that was hard because she was like Miss Chatterbox, and I'm kind of like, could you please just shh? I had a friend who I'd call and I said, can we come over? She had a daughter the same age. And I was kind of, can we come over? And because she won't shut up and I need a break. So
that is hilarious. But at least, you have plenty of inspiration for all of those extroverted characters. I just pull from her. I love that though. That's so funny.
It's so much happiness.
Thank you so much, Bonnie, for joining us tonight. This was so much fun.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. So it was good to finally meet you. I've been watching a few of your StreamYards here and there, and so it's good to finally actually meet you.
I know these are so much fun because we get to talk, and then people get to watch these, and then they get to know you. And these have been great. And so for everyone that's currently watching right now, I am going to drop a link. Let me get it real quick into the comments for Bonnie's story so that you can read it if you haven't read it yet. And just in case you don't know, she also wrote a story for our pet issue that you can go check out, but it's also soon going to be on her website. And so you can go check out her website soon.
Actually, very soon. Just like we just finished it. It's like I'm trying to get it together for the conference, so it will be live by the time the conference.
Right now, the conference gives you a great deadline, because you're trying to get all of this stuff situated. I work better with deadlines. So everyone, I hope that y'all have a wonderful night and a wonderful weekend. If you haven't read any of the stories from this issue, you definitely want to go to our website and check them out. And you definitely want to keep an eye on Bonnie, because I promise you there's a reason she's winning these awards and that this is her second story with us. It's no coincidence. So y'all have a wonderful eating, read plenty of books over the holiday weekend, and happy Memorial Day.
Thank you.